And hello, and happy Monday, everyone. We are that much closer to restrictions being released, so I can see the excitement. You can feel the excitement in the air getting around the community at the moment. Just knowing that the numbers are going down, and it gives a little bit of people a little bit of hope that there's going to be a bit of normality or a sort of sense of normality that'll be hitting us in hopefully the next 12 months. It's been obviously a big challenging time for a lot of people going through the last 3 to 6 months for different people and what they've been going through. But it's as I said, we keep saying it every week, but we believe it's a great opportunity to put those practices in to make sure that we're investing in ourselves and looking at our self-care and having these conversations, because it's I think there's been a time that we've become a little bit taking things for granted in terms of the relationships that we had in our life through work and at home or socially. But I think it's really sort of put a bit of a spotlight on the fact of how important our relationships are and how much we need to invest the energy and sort of the practices around taking care of each other and supporting each other. So, but on exciting times what we are with the foundation, what's going on. Obviously, there's a lot of training and education taking place. We do have our big bike ride coming up, and I know Rae, who we'll introduce in a second, is not an avid cyclist, so we probably won't see her on the Ride With Me event. I know maybe we will. We have our Ride With Me event coming up in 5.5 weeks' time, which is a virtual event. When I say virtual, it is a choose your own adventure. There is actually no one location that the event will be taking place. It is wherever you would like to do it, with whoever you would like to do it with, in terms of the location permitting you to do it. So, or even, as you can see, where I'll probably be doing a lot of mine in my garage and on the virtual trainer. So it's registrations are open. It doesn't cost you a cent to open to register, but it's the fundraising obviously goes a long way to helping Love Me Love You deliver more education and support programs to our youth members, through schools and sports clubs. So it's we look forward to getting everyone involved. We're at 485 participants as we speak, and we're very excited to announce that it was something out of left field is that we have a team from Korea that have registered for the ride. So the message is spreading far and wide, and that's exactly Rae. Big thumbs up. It's the message of Love Me Love You, and the message of talk about mental health and the importance that we need to be placing on it is spreading far and wide. So, but without further ado, we are very excited and I am very excited because I've been waiting to have my special guest on for such a long time. And didn't think she would, put herself in a position to be on a Monday Night Live, because Rae Bonney here on our screen is what we call an integrated wellbeing specialist. Specialises more around the field in terms of men's health, and is a huge player and magician in the men's health space, raising awareness for education programs, in the psychology field, doing the whole things, making sure that that men are being heard as well. We talk about the suicide rates in males, in terms of per capita versus Australia is, 3/4 are male. So there's a lot of that sort of conversation around that, but, allowing, as I said, very much so that we can create that safe space for men to feel like they can talk to somebody and make sure that they're processing it for themselves as well and those around us. So welcome, Rae.
Oh, thank you, Lance. It's an absolute pleasure to be with Love Me Love You live tonight. And I loved your introduction as well, because it's exactly how you and I met. And I think it was maybe 3, possibly 4 years ago. We were introduced because of our mutual love of mental health issues, and mine especially being men. So I was gagging to meet you. And I believe we met at Taronga Village in Hawthorn. That was the first time we met.
Yep.
And and I was going overseas the next day, so I was sort of up to pussy's bone with all kinds of things. But I thought, no, it's really important that I meet this guy, because I've heard so much about him and the work that he does. And so I was a little bit nervous, about meeting you. And we sat down. I think it was about 5:30 in the morning, something like that. And we sat down, and you gentlemanly, as always, grabbed the coffees, and you sat down, and I said, "Are you all right?" And you said, "Oh, actually, I'm a little bit nervous." And I said, "Oh, what's coming up? What's coming up next?" And you went, "You." And I could not believe that you were nervous meeting me, but it really just re-emphasized to me one of the things, the icons that I work with all the time, and that's the iceberg. You know, what you see at the tip, you've got no idea what's going on for somebody underneath or how they're seeing the world. And, you know, that was you that day. As I had this assumption that, you know, you were this confident, well put together man, as you are. However, underneath that iceberg, there are a few little fish swimming around. Oh, that sounded wrong, didn't it?
That sounded a little bit wrong.
Retract that. Oh, this is live though, so we can't.
Well, I was quite nervous leading into that because for those that in the space that we're in, you are holding such high stature in the space and making sure that, you know. So I was a bit nervous, thinking, "Oh, what am I getting into here?" And I'm actually, why am I putting myself out there? And realizing. But I think ever since then, and it was about 3 years ago, and it was just a matter of fact. Since then, the open conversations that have been able to have between us, for myself, I've greatly appreciated the 1.5 hour phone calls of just talking about life and things and doing and being and people and, you know, and just talking, because it is for you, and we've had this conversation before, it can be quite challenging being, you know, a leader in the space that you are, in terms of then where do you go? Because where do you go for your conversations on top? Because people always look to say, well, Rae knows what she's doing, she must be okay. How do you go about it?
Nowhere. Yeah. Still, I had a conversation this time last week with somebody who I thought probably got it. And, you know, I've, you know, like anyone, you know, going through COVID and, you know, all the other rock and roll of life, was, you know, having a week that was more challenging than others, and, you know, disclosed it to this person. And their first response was, "But you're so dynamic." I went, "Yes, I am. Thank you very much." So you feel the way that you are. Well, how do you do your job if you're so messed up? They didn't say messed up, they used the F word. And it was like, are you for real? Like, so that's kind of where we are, without going into too much about that conversation. When we talk about being able to have a conversation, just ring a mate, just disclose, just, you know, connect, you can't. You really have to pick your audience, and that's why I'm so grateful to have you and a very few people in my circle who I know that I can call and tell you exactly how I feel, and you're not going to tell me, "What about the kids?" "Oh, but, you know, you have a beautiful home." Whatever it might be, it's not the answer, people. When somebody discloses to you what it feels like being them and it's not great, shut up and listen.
That's pretty easy. Look, a lot easier said than done, though, and we know that, Rae. And it is a lot easier said than done. Just say, be quiet. Every good conversation starts with listening, and allow that process. But, you know, instead of not trying to fill up the space sometimes, and we're doing this a lot with our programming, and we're talking about support with people, is that don't fill up the space. You know, just because there might be a silence, or you think you have to say something, don't fill up the space just for the sake of it. And I think in terms of the conversations that we've had over, I said, a number of times, is that it just, I like the situation because I don't have to talk much. You do a lot of the talking when we have our conversations, but it's allowing that process to happen. But then when it's my turn, it's the same thing. You don't jump in, and it's allowing that process to happen, because, you know, hearing your own voice sometimes is actually exactly all you need to hear.
That's right. And, you know, since we literally broke the ice off the tip of that iceberg that day, you know, we've gone on and, you know, done work together with I'm Just a Man, which is another charity that's done fantastic work in raising awareness around the real issues around men's health. White Owl for Men's Health, another one of the charities that I work with, who does amazing work, especially in connecting to the prostate cancer issues through the Australian Prostate Cancer Research Centre. And of course, you were a guest on my radio show as well, once upon a time.
I was, and probably one of the only times I've actually been really challenged on a radio show, because it was I remember I was saying thing. I was quite nervous, driving up to that session. Was that at Box Hill that way?
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
Yep. 94.1 FM, 3WBC.
Boom, there you are. Perfect. But I remember, because most of the radio station things that I have to do are, a 5 to 10 minute thing, and that's it. You tell your story, bang, what's coming up. Thanks very much for coming. But really unraveling the whole that whole episode for me, same thing. But it was challenging, because you're sort of, and what we talk about a lot is challenging what you're saying. What I talk about, or what I do, or how I'm going about it. But if I'm saying something, don't just take it for what it is. If you think there's a concern or something that's not right with it, challenge that conversation. Put it back on. So create some ownership over what's being said, not just they're just throwaway lines, and then you're going to take it for what it's worth.
That's right, because people love boundaries. People feel safe in boundaries. They feel safe being contained. So when you challenge somebody in a really respectful and caring way, it makes people feel good, because it means you're listening. It means that you care enough to question. And as long as you're not being disrespectful or, deliberately argumentative, then it's a very good experience. Yeah.
You're not responding to pick a fight. You're responding because, well, that doesn't sit right with you, because you're thinking, oh, what's happening here? How do we go about, and you're a great barrier breaker downer, if that's one way to put it. How do you do it? How is it that you said, for the other people out there, and we're going to get back to you in a second, how do you do that for people? How do you break down those barriers?
Well, I think when I really embarked in earnest in the mental health space, which was probably about 12 years ago, I first of all made an agreement with myself that I would never help and I would never give advice. And I think that was the best advice I ever gave myself, was to not do that, because, I think creating an environment that supports how people are feeling, however they're feeling, is the first place we go to. So if you can create an environment that supports how people are feeling, and that's a listening, active, respectful environment, you're more likely going to have an opportunity to listen to what it feels like being someone else. But quite often we create the therapeutic space in the space that we want to create, and we bring a person into it, and then we tell them what to do. We tell them what we're going to do for them, and we package them up in this neat little thing that makes us feel good about going to sleep at night, and send them off and go, there you go. And then we go, oh, Joe Bloggs didn't do everything I told him, and I've told him a million times, and he won't do it, so I give up.
Yeah.
That's, so I'm really strong on listen to what it feels like being somebody else, create an environment of safety, security, dignity, and pride preservation, which is especially important for men. And then you've got a good chance of gradually being able to find out what it feels like being them.
Yeah. By pride preservation, what do you mean?
Well, pride is, it runs high in all of us. We all have some sense of pride or some level of pride, and because of the way that men are designed to risk their lives to save families, and women are designed to risk their lives to make families, for example. So pride runs really deep in men, because that's the thing that keeps them going, and it keeps them engaged and keeps them really jazzed about things. So when we erode at that pride, then we erode sometimes at purpose. And if somebody doesn't have purpose, it's very, very difficult to find an objective or find, something to head for in life. And that's where, people, and especially men, can fall into that rabbit hole of hopelessness and helplessness that can lead to suicide.
Yeah. Which, that whole self-worth piece, is, it's not reinventing the wheel with what we're saying here. That's been going on for centuries and, for forever. It's about identifying your worth and how you go about it, and creating the tools and making sure that you're taking those steps to move forward with that. because
but that's got to happen from childhood. We can't just raise a boy into manhood and then go, there you go, now you've got to have some purpose and now you've got to, have some objective in your life. We have to raise boys from the get-go. And there are so many things that we might talk about tonight around some of those risk factors that are, born in boys that are activated upon in adulthood that we don't recognise, in adolescence or childhood.
Yeah. And speaking of that, in terms of instilling those behaviours from an early age, what about if it hadn't been taught to you? Because, we do a lot of stuff in terms of with empowering caregivers and coaches and teachers and anyone that's obviously direct connection into a youth member. Is what have you done know? As a parent? How am I supposed to know if I'm doing it right or if I'm doing it wrong or if I'm doing anything at all? How do I know?
Well, if you think about the language and messaging of the world and the narrative that we have about boys and men at the moment, it's very derogatory.
Mm-hmm.
It's and I don't mean to overstate this, but lots of banding around of things like toxic masculinity, violence against women. We never talk about violence against men, and male disposability, I think, has become increasingly obvious, even through some of the government initiatives that we might even talk about. Men's health strategy, health prevention strategies that do not include men, and a lot of our health prevention pathways and support pathways are very designed towards women, and that's why women will most likely be gravitated towards those health services, because they're very geared towards women, where they exclude men. And you think about how our boys are raised here in Australia typically. Blokes play sport, which is great. Boys play sport. They play cricket. They play footy. I mean, Lance, you know this. You've lived through this, and not very often are boys tasked with domestic duties, like to actually pick up primary responsibility for some of those domestic duties. Girls are very much raised to protect their bodies, so we're taught from a very early age of how we receive care, how we find care, and what to expect. We're very, very in tune with our bodies, whereas boys aren't. Your arm can be falling off. It's like, oh, suck it up, son. You'll get there. And I have actually seen many of those stories live. You'll be right, mate. So how is a boy expected to grow into a man and then all of a sudden go, now I'm going to seek help, now I'm going to show emotion and care about myself?
So you're thinking that the mental health messaging, the programming, the research, the resources that are going to it is a little bit gender bias, do you think?
I think early intervention stuff, and I love the stuff that you're doing and a few others like you, because you're getting into that early intervention generational change bit where you're getting youth. And I'm not talking about boys, I'm talking about boys and girls talking together, whatever your preference may be, but people getting together and talking about what it feels like being them, and learning how to respect each other, not just one gender. And respecting and accepting and giving. There's one thing to say boys should cry, but there's another thing to accept that boys can cry. They're very different things. We tell men cry, men show emotion, but I'll tell you what, if all the poles and wires are going down at 2 a.m. in the middle of a storm, it's blokes out there hanging up the electricity wires. They can't be crying then. I'm sorry, they can't. And again, that's not a gendered thing, but typically men, again, are designed to risk their lives to protect. So they're most likely, and that's not saying that women don't go and do that kind of stuff, but most likely men will run into burning buildings, climb poles in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
That's part of,
For me, this is Rae, and I love our conversations, and it can be quite debatable to think that Rae Bonney, mother of 3, would be more of an advocate for men's health and understanding of men's ideas and ways to go about it than for females. How does this path created this way? Because I know we're gonna get feedback to say, oh, that's just not how we speak, but this is reality. This is reality. These are the things that aren't being said, and we talk about it a lot at Love Me Love You about we're not here to fluff the situation anymore. You know, we're in this space to really disrupt the norm. And you said about the narrative that's being said and mentioned, and the way that society has been working through this for generations, is that it is a man versus woman, not we are one. But everyone works their roles and plays their strengths and understands, and that it is that whole permission. Giving them permission, not saying that they should, because when we say you should do something, we all know it. It's not, we don't do it. Yeah?
No.
It don't work. But how have you given yourself permission? How are we here?
To actually bat for men as well as women. I looked at my private practice the other day, and my current clients, I actually have 3 gay females in my current book. So no, I love women and I love working with women. They're great, and I attract a lot of them. So it's again, the work that I do is not to the exclusion of women at all. It's just that I actually really like men, and when one recognises that in the world of every second, in every day, another man kills himself, and there are countless others trying, it just seems like a no-brainer to do something about this. I also grew up with men from a certain generation, demographic and socioeconomics, that I was recipient of some of the ensuing behaviours of that. So I was really affected for many years after leaving home at a pretty young age, and when I started in earnest my career in the mental health space, it really got me thinking about why rather than what. So being pretty broken, as I said, and really affected from my childhood experiences, once I left home and school and started out into the world, I had relationships with men, great men that didn't ever work out for me. And it took me quite a while, far too long, to work out that I was the common thread in this. And through my need and my want and my demand and feeling of entitlement to be loved and cared for, I had to take a really good look at myself and confess, and this is so hard, to myself, that my behaviour was abusive, it was cruel, and most of all, unacceptable because it was violent. And most people will not hear that. They will not hear that women can be violent towards men. The first question is, oh, well, it must have been just emotional abuse. No, physical as well. And that's happening all the time, and we see it especially now in COVID, where men had no pathways to support before COVID when they're being abused in their home. And now with COVID, it's even more hidden, and there's even less chance of them. So we're seeing a lot of suicide, because of that. And again, that is not in any way denouncing that so many women are victims of domestic violence and violence, full stop. They are. However, men are as well. And with early intervention and generational change, if women are still charged with the primary care of raising our boys, well, what are you doing to them to make them like this? So let's look at the early intervention stage so we can reduce the risk of women being hurt and men being hurt as well. I'm so enthusiastic about that, and only because I was one of them, and I know that it was so difficult for me. I couldn't get any help for myself because nobody would believe me.
Changing the narrative around it, the generational, and this is why we do a lot of the work in the youth space. But we, as you said, not just targeting through youth programs, is that a lot of the work that we do within the youth actually is 50% of the work is done with the parents or the elder members of that youth network, right?
Yep.
And that it's holistic in its approach. It's not like you should do this, but this is what we can do. We need to work through this together. This is the conversations we need to be having. This is the risk. Talk about in a second about the risk versus protective factors. Not just because someone's of low socioeconomic area is that they're more chances of being at risk.
Well, they are. They are actually.
Well, there you go. But it's different dynamics, isn't it? They're at risk of they're at more risk of different things. In terms of the challenges that come with life hardships, but in terms of it being more in terms of a type of mental illness. It's an open game. We know that. So it's tell us about the work through the Australian Men's Health Forum that you're heavily involved with. Yes.
So I'm really lucky to be accepted. Oh, no, I shouldn't say that. I feel fortunate to be part of a few great groups. I mentioned before White Alpha Men's Health. We're a charity that partners with Australian Prostate Cancer, and we raise a lot of money and awareness to just actually get resources into place to support the dignity of pride of men who are moving through prostate cancer, whether it be diagnosis or post-op. So that's fantastic. And then of course my work with the Men's Shed movement. I'm an honorary member of the Monash Men's Shed here in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, and I've been down there for about 6 years, I think, and I love those guys. I love going down there, being part of that community and working with men of a certain age. And not to say that men's sheds are only for men of a certain age, open to everyone, but it's fantastic movement that saves lives. And then of course the Australian Men's Health Forum, I was the first woman on the board. We're the peak body for men's health here in Australia, and I became on the board about 2 or 3 years ago, and now I'm the vice president. So I'm so happy to be a really active part of that organisation. We've been around for a while, but primarily a volunteer organisation until a couple of years ago, where we got a tiny bit of funding and built a tiny little administration, which might be small, but it's extremely effective. And we've already executed so many great programs and initiatives that have really been able to bring to light some of the things about men's health that people don't know, and we call it know your man facts. So they're things you might know and things that you don't know.
Can you tell me, because I'm still trying to work out how manly I am in this world.
Man, I was telling my daughter about your guns the other day. So they're just like massive. Like, and I said, and when you hug him, it's like you're just in this like cuddle cave. Like,
have the odds in it. It's one thing, and that is one thing that's obviously missing. That very human energy, that very connection that we're all, and that is you talked about before, the obviously the flow on effect from all these issues around isolation that's caused through people's lives, and we talk about the very factor of that men's shed. And I was actually having this conversation with someone a couple of days ago about men's sheds, and that someone just told me, and had a conversation with saying, I just found out that there is a couple of these men's shed things around. And I'm like, there is a lot, but how do people access it? How do the people get there? How do we know?
Do you know that there are more men's sheds than there are McDonald's outlets here in Australia? Like. But again, you've got to hide them away, and don't let anyone know about them, because, I don't want to go into that in this forum. But, if you want to connect with your local men's shed, just get on the Men's Shed Association website and you'll find your local one. They're really easy to find. There's all different offshoots of men's sheds, but, typically they're really great places for men to connect, especially when they've lost their purpose in life. That's why a lot of retirees will go there. Once you've painted the house 10 times, it's time to sort of reconnect. So, there's intellectual sheds, there's quiet sheds. It's not all about tools. So I know ours at Monash, we've done such a great job. We've gone from, a working shed. Now we've got another facility that's a quiet shed. You can go and do yoga there. You can do Pilates, puzzling, music, all kinds of jazz. It's well when it's open again, once the restrictions have lifted.
And also with that, there's obviously they're always looking for volunteers to help out, aren't they?
Well, yes. I mean, donations are great. Money's even better, because that will help us support more men. Same with the Australian Men's Health Forum. We, as I said, we get a very small amount of funding, but we're always looking for support, through sponsorship, especially of some of our programs. Like I mentioned before, Know Your Man Facts was a great one that we launched last year, for International Men's Health Week, and it's this fantastic slideshow about know your man facts, which is everything you don't know and everything you do know, coupled with a whole all these speaker notes as well, so anyone can pick this up, take it to their organisation, run a program for men's health, whether it's Men's Health Week or Movember or whatever you want to do, and raise money also for the Australian Men's Health Forum. Simple. Ask me how, please.
Perfect. All right. I do appreciate that. And I would say about in terms of the men's health world is, I myself, before restrictions were in, was getting regular checkups, for a whole range of things, right through from the mindset, body, everything to come through and making that a regular thing. And I think that's the very understanding that we're getting to is about normalising that very behaviour.
Yeah. But there's a lot of data coming through, Lance, that, men don't access testing and aren't accessing testing at the moment as well, especially around the prostate cancer piece. And because, I guess, of, a number of factors, including, men typically still occupy most of our workforce and still primarily are major breadwinners, they don't have time to do this. And also they don't want to find out they're sick, because if they are sick, then they can't go to work. So, it's really, I don't know how we get through that barrier, because it's sort of like a bit of push me, pull you. But again, at the Australian Prostate Cancer Centre, they make it really, really easy for men to get down there and be tested in a very non-invasive way. But still, if you think about the amount of funding that goes into cancer research and cancer prevention, the lion's share of that, goes into female cancer, like breast cancer, ovarian cancer, whereas, prostate cancer kills many more men. Heart disease kills more men, but still it's lacking so much funding.
How's, as I said, normalising that behaviour to get there, and and there's a fear. There is 100%. And this is why a lot of people don't. Same thing with your mental health is the fear of that diagnosis. What might be, because if I don't get diagnosed, I don't have it. Then I don't have to deal with it. But we need to, as I said, normalising that behaviour, just checking in, making sure it's tested, everything just to come through. It doesn't matter if you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, wherever you are, that, it's a consistent, normalised behaviour. And I think that's something that I've learnt very much so since I actually, from the first time that I went and saw a psychologist going 8 years ago. It's that consistency of checking in, and then right through to the normal health checks that needing to be done. So, it's, for those the guys out there and the women out there, make sure you just keep normalising that behaviour.
But unless we, target funding with the government to build programs and build pathways that make it accessible for men, and building, gender-specific support services, men and women are different. Go figure. And,
Sorry.
again, primarily most of our services are geared for women, and that's why they're very comfortable in accessing them because they're there. Whereas moving away from that and investing some money at least, given the fact that even 75% of suicides are men, and our suicide prevention strategy doesn't really include that conversation to a degree. So I mean, if you halved male suicide, you're going to make a big dent in it straight away. And I think for me, one thing that I really harp on about is that in terms of male suicide, the assumption is that it's a mental health issue. And 12 years ago, the founding president of the Australian Men's Health Forum, a guy called Professor John McDonald, he challenged that popular belief that most suicides are the result of depression or a mental health challenge, and he crafted this whole thing around situational crisis. So we now know that probably most male suicide is attributable to a relationship breakdown, followed by financial distress, followed by alienation from children, and often that's the trifecta. So that then feeds into the family law reform and a whole bunch of other stuff that, again, if we just started to stop chucking money at everything and had a really good look at segmenting some of these, I guess, investigations, or whatever you call them, royal commissions.
Royal Commission.
And it's not to the exclusion of women at all. It's just recognising that, gender does play a role in these kinds of services.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting to see, you said, the findings that come from this Royal Commission, because whether it actually doesn't.
Which one?
The Royal Commission of who knows when it's going to come or what's going to go on. And I have a lot of my contacts that have been having these conversations, trying to have these very conversations with ministers and government level, which is not for me, but and it's just falling on deaf ears, and the understanding of what we need to do and how we need to go about it, and trying to come up with the result of what this Royal Commission, whatever it might be in the end. It's the same thing. It's going to go back into where we're talking about all the funding is going to go to where it goes to right now, and it is in terms of the hospitalisation, the victim mentality of where that resources need to go to, as opposed to we talked about before. The generational change of early intervention, education through it, making sure that we're changing it from the grassroots. The very culture is where we're at.
Well, the foundations of good health are laid down in childhood, and research actually shows that I think around 2 in 3 suicide attempts later in life are linked to adverse childhood experiences for boys.
Wow.
So, we're looking at things that aren't really spoken about, that, again, there's no support for, like sexual abuse, in boys is something that's very, very overlooked. However, these little boys grow up into men who are extremely hurt, extremely damaged, and very, very angry. So, again, it's why aren't we creating these services, or even an acceptance that boys can be victims of sexual abuse?
Yeah. And I'm going to say, and it's usually the way, that it's not very marketable, right? It's not very marketable. You know what I mean? But I'm saying, like, it's hard for, to drive around campaigns around the truth, and the reality, and the absolutely brutal honesty of what's happening for a lot of people. The campaigning around that, it will not be done, which is an issue. Because as you said, the 2 out of 3 you're talking about there in terms of the rate through that are linked back through to, early childhood for a whole range of reasons, obviously through, family violence, abuse, whatever it might be through there. But, it's an issue. And
I have a question for you as well.
Here we go.
Because I think one of the keys to, boys having a much more prosperous life and really good role modeling. I was going to say role modeling is, guess what? They're dads. Like, fathers are really, really important. Yeah. And you're one. Tell us about that.
My relationship with my dad now is great. It's strong. It's honest. It is all what I would want to be in a relationship. We don't have much face connection, when he lives down in the country, so we don't see a lot. But the challenge
is that because you're better looking than him and he's jealous, or?
Much better looking, but my dad is so what's dad? Dad's 67 now and still has an 8-pack. So it's it's a lot of our time we like to hang together is usually during winter when he doesn't have to take his top off and shame me through that. But my relationship with my dad growing up was rocky. It was rocky, but my dad lived with undiagnosed mental illness for such a long period of time that because we didn't know, or he didn't know what was going on, didn't know how to deal with it. So it was just like we thought that the absolute roller coaster, there was no sort of middle ground. It wasn't just like a little Ferris wheel just going around smoothly. It was absolute roller coaster. And dealing with that as a family for us was quite challenging at certain times. But the great times were like straight out of a movie. They're amazing. The genuine connection that our family has, between my brother, sister, my mum and I, from growing up, because of the amount of sport we played together, the amount of holidays, we did everything together. But that's our very connection, and I think that's exactly what Dad wanted from us as a family. That very strong connection. And you talk about that role modeling purpose of a male or of a mum is, setting the ways and the tones that hopefully then you look at and going, that's the very behaviour that you should instill into yourself as you get older and then you become a parent. And I do believe that has actually rubbed off on us really well.
So how would you then describe being a father?
Being a father, I love it. It is the most challenging yet rewarding thing that you'll ever do in your life. I'm flawed like every other parent, I believe. And there's so much pressure and expectation on parents to get everything right all the time. And the challenges that come with your kids is that I'm flawed. I don't get it right all the time, and I do. I talk about sometimes when I'm delivering programs, and sometimes I sit back and go, like I've just said all this, and I don't do it all myself all the time. And this is the thing, but this is the life. And you talk about it before with you, Rae, is that how do you deliver something in terms of your own reality of your own life when sometimes you actually don't believe it. Because it is quite so challenging. Life is extremely challenging. Life is extremely stressful. Life is great, full of unbelievable opportunities. If we actually just scale ourselves back and just slow ourselves down and just be right in with the experience.
Yeah.
Most today even like my Lennox had his little nap, and it was just Emma, Alexander, and I sitting out on the front nature strip, just sitting, playing with cars. Without having to be thinking, I've got to go do something, I've got to go be somewhere, I've got to go talk to someone. The very idea of just being present, I think, for me, has been what I actually learned from my experiences when I grew up.
Yeah.
Because Dad was so busy. Dad worked double jobs. He was always doing things. Like soccer when we were younger. Then he was sort of just quite busy all the time in the initial phase of my youth. But then it was you missed a lot of those experiences. And I've always said to him, I didn't become a father not to be a dad, and I understand how that works. I didn't have kids not to be around.
Yeah.
And we work so hard in our lives, but we work so hard at making a living that we forget to live and our genuine purpose of why we're here.
Yeah, and I think that's what's changing now is that, we're starting to shift from that expectation that we have of men to what we'd like from men. And, I was talking to you the other day about, the government's preventative health strategy. and that's being looked at the moment as one of their new initiatives, and how men and boys again are being overlooked. And they're planning this 10-year preventative health strategy, which is great, and it aims to create some fundamental shift in a health system that focuses primarily on treating illness and disease to a more kind of balanced system that places more focus on prevention. But, go figure, like every day in Australia, nearly 50 men under the age of 75 die in ways that would have been avoided. That's a lot. And, through better preventative health, that could have been decreased. But men account also for 2 in 3 potentially preventable deaths in Australia, making them a priority. So, the draft strategy I think there's 6 key points that they're addressing in their initial stages. And the first one is reducing tobacco use. Now, that's linked to about 400 deaths a week, and men account for 3 in 5 of those lives lost. Point 2 is improving consumption of a healthy diet. Poor nutrition is linked to 30 male deaths every day. Their diets are low in fruit, nuts, seed, processed meats are high sodium, blah, blah. I could go on. Then, of course, exercise is another thing, and the assumption is men are actually more likely to exercise. However, with cardiovascular issues, men are more likely to die as well. So that's another point for men as well. Cancer screening, we talked about that before, and cancer kills more than 500 men in a week. And they're more than 50% more likely to die by cancer than women. But we spend less money preventing cancer in men, with 90% of the national cancer screening focusing on women. So, when you're getting your bowel testing kit, or, we get breast cancer screening and things like that, the only thing that is targeted towards men, or men actually receive in their hands, is the bowel testing kit. Immunisation is another thing as well, and men and boys are less likely to be immunised against some specific stuff like HPV and influenza. And of course, now we've got COVID, where COVID is killing many more men than women. But it's a virus that's likely to be targeted to a vaccine program in the future, where men might not enter into that as well. And the last one being alcohol and drug related harm. Well, more than 80 deaths a week are attributable to men using alcohol and illicit drugs. So there's 6 points there in a strategy that's about prevention that still doesn't address men who are at the highest risk. So if we want to do something, let's start talking about this. And it's not, again, about the exclusion of women, that women don't matter. They bloody well do matter. But men do also, because men have wives, they have mums, they have children, and we don't want them to be leaving too early or not enjoying their life.
Yeah, you said you're very effective in not enjoying and being a part of the opportunity of being in this world. It's, you said just opening that conversation, opening the normality around that conversation as well. And it's not to be debatable or anything. It's just to say that this is what's happening. This is where we're at. This look at the avenues of where we're going as we move forward. Because obviously we're not. There's been historically we haven't got it right. But what we don't know in terms of the society, what society doesn't know, they don't know needs supporting, because they don't know it. These sorts of stats and the research that comes around it is not being released. So,
But if you visit the Australian Men's Health Forum, we have so many resources that's all evidence-based, that if you want to know your man facts, and if you want to know, get some of these fact sheets, they're very, very well written. They're easy to absorb. They're easy to bang on a wall, put in the post, chuck on your socials, just to show people, to show them what's happening. We're not about telling. We're not about threatening or, again, excluding a gender. It's just to say, hey, check this out, because here's a way through to showing the man in your life what's possible, as opposed to telling him what to do.
Yeah. And that's and that is, the available resources. Why are we calling them know all your man facts? Why aren't they just your life facts? we say this very idea about understanding that it's not me versus you and us versus them.
Because we've got to make it sexy marketing, Lance. We've got to make it, you know.
It's like campaigning life. It's
But if you called it, you know, here's some men's information, they might go, oh, that's pretty boring. Who cares, you know? But you know, there was something that I like. My heart sung last week when I found out about this organisation, and it was a few years ago. I think you were at this White Owl event, and you were one of our panel speakers. But I met a guy, and I was chatting, and he had a little backpack on his back, and he said to me, "Oh, Ray, do you know what's in my backpack?" You know, most people go, "Oh no, I don't want to know." I said, "Yeah, sure, I want to know." And I've got my bra strap popping out there, and anyway, he said, well, you know, a few years ago I had prostate cancer, and you know, I've recently recovered, which is all great, yay. He said, but you know, I've been left with, like so many men, that terrible burden of incontinence, erectile dysfunction, all that blah blah that we don't often think about when men have recovered. And he said, so tonight I came to your event and I came in one nappy, and the other nappy I had in my bag, and that's now sodden, and that's my shame that I'm carrying on my back right now. So in about half an hour I have to go home because this next nappy's not going to hold what I need to. And he said, you know, there are no disposal units for male sanitary items ever in the world. Now, if you think about the rates of prostate cancer, the rates of survival, yay, and the rates of men that are ending up with these issues, these incontinence issues, not to mention all the other men and boys, irrespective of prostate cancer, that live with this, that there are no disposal units in public toilet, that is just incomprehensible to me. And, you know, last week I found out about an organisation that's just been built called Bins for Blokes, and it's part of the Continence Foundation of Australia, a part of this, and it's this huge initiative to get bins for blokes in dunnies in Australia, and it's taking off like wildfire. So anyone that's listening, please get on it. It's bins. You're going to put links to this.
I'll put the link in the comments.
Yeah. They want advocates, so people that are talking about it. They want people that will actually, you know, make connections in the community to network, to get organisations to do it. They've got all kinds of sanitary organisations on board. It's just awesome. Yeah. I never thought that I would be so excited about sanitary bins in men's toilets, but I really am.
Yeah, this is the very the conversations that aren't being had. You said it as making and then obviously they're talking about the mental health impact that very experience has had on that man. You know.
Oh yeah.
You know, the embarrassment, the shame, which is obviously very commonly linked to around men's, with mental illness, but also with suicide and how they're working through that. But it's
one of the precursors to suicide.
Yeah,
is, you know, can you imagine being a man that's survived prostate cancer and you don't have access to any social life because of your guilt and shame and not being able to go out? So what do? Sit in your armchair and drink and smoke yourself to death. It's a form of suicide.
Yeah. So we're talking about the very harmful coping strategies that people use, and you know, and it's understanding what those harmful coping strategies are. You said before about the commonality around tobacco use and the deaths that causes across the world.
Because men don't value their lives.
Yeah.
They're not taught to value their lives. So when we tell them to stop drinking, stop smoking, stop eating pies, you're taking their best friends away. There's got to be another way in to show men that they're valued and that there's a reason for them to stay alive. And that's when those things will drop off, if we show them a reason to live.
Yeah.
Through those really great support networks and support pathways and services that are designed for men.
Yeah, and the very language around it is different for a male to a female. and that is how it works. It's just the genetic makeup, it's the hormones, it's everything that comes in with us. It's and how we've gone through that. So it's I've got a question here. Quick one from Ads Turnbull. May I ask something? I've been overseas studying and working with very different healing modalities, and out of touch with mainstream approaches here. What are mainstream services offering in terms of people in spiritual emergence these days, whether it be mental health or addiction? I don't seem to be seeing any progression with mental health or drug and alcohol services in Australia. How do you answer that one?
Well, that's a big mouthful, Ads, but thanks for the question. The Australian Drug Foundation does really, really good work, and there has been a recent government study on an alcohol strategy recently. So I can have a Google of that, and if you get Lance your email address, I can send you some links to the ADF and also to this current strategy that's, I'm not sure if it's launched yet, but I have read it and it's very good about our approach. But you also mentioned spirituality in that comment as well. And I guess they're kind of two different questions. So I know a lot of people that are doing, spiritual work in the men's space, as well as, the generic space as well around mental health.
Yeah, on the spiritual world that we were talking about, to give a big shout out to our man Asher Packman. Asher, the great man.
Yeah.
And he spoke at our breakfast a couple of years, 3 years ago, I think, 2-3 years ago now, at a breakfast we had at Etihad Stadium, and he shared his story and the amount of responses that I had from males. Same thing in terms of his story of where he had been, lost a family, a sister and his mother through to illnesses, different types of illnesses. But then he, his own issues that he had from being a high-flying VP for marketing for Warner Brothers to the world that he was living, and now obviously I think he's the president or the chairman of Meditation Australia, and the amount of work that he does in this space. Most beautiful man. So,
I saw him pop up yesterday doing something.
And if you want to go anywhere with shoes on and you're making him wear shoes, he probably won't turn up. But that's quite a beautiful man there. So if you're listening, Asher, g'day, buddy. We talk about these sorts of things that we do in our world, Rae, and family is king. And I talk about it a lot. You have a beautiful family. You have your 3 amazing little kidlets. Well, a couple of them are quite kidlets, but they're George. Obviously you've had one move away through this COVID time for work, but you would be very proud of the work that he does and raising awareness for the mental health space in the hospitality industry.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Yes, George has my son George. He's 22. He was in Junior MasterChef when he was a little boy, so he sort of got into the industry when he was 12, and has worked in it ever since, really. So at 22, he's a bit of a veteran. But about 5 years ago, he started Eat the Issue, which is his charity, and he partners with all kinds of establishments, not just here in Melbourne, but around Australia, to raise awareness around some of the common challenges within hospitality. He's been recipient of some of them, and now he's heading up this, amazing kitchen at One and Only. It's an Emirates resort in Wolgan Valley in the Blue Mountains, and all of a sudden he's in charge of 22 staff, and working incredible hours, but absolutely loving it. But he said to me today, Mum, I'm homesick, and when I have my break, don't come up here. Like when restrictions are eased, I want to come home, and I just want to see home. So one could say, oh, poor George, he's got issues, he's homesick, he's not managing. He's managing fine. He's actually smashing it.
Yeah.
And he can feel homesick at the same time.
Yeah. Is that very, very understanding that we're allowed to feel these things.
Yeah.
We're allowed to feel these experiences and giving ourselves permission to feel these experiences at the same time while succeeding and being your best in your day. You know,
Yes.
like I had that experience, and you know, this comes with the daily stresses of life. Yeah, there's a whole range of different stresses that affect us in different ways, and they're allowed to affect us.
That's right. Well, I mean, because we're all working from home at the moment, Rose, my oldest, she's 25 and she works in law. So she sits down one end of the table. At the other, I sit in the middle because I'm the mum. And at the other end of the table is Rory, who's 11 and doing grade 6 homeschooling. But Rose, working in law, becomes under such stress constantly. But it's not my job to tell her not to do that because she's got a very high work ethic and she's allowed to exhibit stress because stress is very different to anxiety. Stress is a normal reaction to life. So when she's doing that, I'm her mum and I want to protect her. However, she's also an adult. So I just have to create that environment that supports how they're feeling. So I cook lots of food, lots of fruit platters, lots of vegetable platters, you know, send a joke text or something, you know, whatever it might be, and get on with my, you know, so actually somebody rang me today and they said, are you still working? I went, yeah, I reckon I'll keep giving it a shot for a little while longer.
And as I said, in the interpretation of stress, in people's way they go about it, we can play the victim and succumb into it, or actually, okay, this is stressful, this is what I'm doing, but you know,
normal.
You thrive off it. You know, you're allowed to thrive off it. You know, it's, you know, being busy is very different between being busy and stressed and productive. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. With stress is a driver. Like, how many accountants do you know at month end that aren't stressed? You know, and they've been doing it for up 10 years. They know they're ready for it. They love it. Well, they probably don't love it, but
yeah, well, they kind of do. This is the thing when you talk to an accountant, and they have the genuine love for numbers.
yeah.
About it. It's like, yeah, that's a good looking for. It's but anyway, that space. So, and Rory, how are you going with home learning?
Great. Well, again, you know, my attitude is if your child is happy and they're engaging in things that make them feel happy and engaged, then they're most likely going to be learning. So, Laverna Primary School don't tune into this, but you know, I chuck your sheet out every week, and he's like his handwriting's improved. He knows more than any of us in terms of general knowledge. He researches something different every day. When George lived at home for a little bit before he went up north, and they were making feta cheese with each other from scratch, and you know, it's all kinds of really cool stuff that he's been doing, whilst paying attention to the curriculum, of course.
Exactly, of course.
He's a happy kid.
I think their understanding around the importance on a child's well-being through this time, and even when they go back to in-school learning, that's the most important thing, because
absolutely,
grow.
He doesn't watch TV during the day. He doesn't play games or anything like that. He's completely focused on he's very self-taught, and I'm really, really proud of him at age 11. That I think he's in a better position to move into year 7 with his, newfound independence and maturity than if we'd nailed him to a desk and yelled at him to complete tasks that don't make sense.
I mean, yelling at anyone doesn't work anyway. So it's But before we leave, I'm very mindful and very grateful for the. And I told someone today the absolute power bombs, the knowledge bombs that would be coming from you tonight. Is and you haven't disappointed, Rae.
Oh, thanks.
So, but we do some questions, and before I do these questions, I do want to say before, and I'm talking about my dad, when you mentioned before, and someone's commented around that, is that I couldn't love my dad anymore. From what the world was to what the world is now, it is a completely different world, but so am I. And my relationship with my dad is, I do believe it is extremely strong, and he has shown me what, in terms of being a father, is meant to be. Is about the idea of he's the very idea. His very idea is he'll take his own life for the sake of your life. And I think that giving of him in terms of his care and his love and his support to all of his family members is the most important thing that, as I said, I've learned and I appreciate and acknowledge. So I didn't want that to come across any differently from before. So I just wanted to touch base on that.
Didn't sound like that at all from my end.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to touch base. And sometimes it can be, as I said, interpretation is everything in this world. And also, before we leave on the questions, my son Alexander, he's not going to watch this because he's in bed 2 hours ago, but it was his 5th birthday on the weekend. And we had the most amazing little Zoom birthday party where we had actual superheroes drop in due to our, thanks for our friends at Friend and Me who were able to organise that. But just seeing the genuine love and like overwhelming response for him, seeing Captain America and Spider-Man on the screen, and then actually having my brother and my brother and my sister-in-law and my niece, they dressed up as superheroes, and my brother-in-law dressed up as superhero. Everyone was getting in on it, and just the genuine care. And it just shows about the very small gestures that we give to people in this world, and allow ourselves to be kids. Yeah, have some fun with life. Allow ourselves to be a part of this world, because that experience. And I remember I did it for my niece's first birthday, who she's now just about to turn 18. And I did it for her first birthday, where I rocked up and everyone else was in normal gear, and I rocked up in a Tigers outfit. To do that, I believe it's just something that we should all be able to do and give ourselves permission to be able to do that. So, but what would you tell your 15-year-old self, Rae Bonney? Ooh.
Oh.
Where am I going?
The little bit you don't know about me, question asker, is that at the age of 15, I was expelled from school and left home all in one fell swoop.
Ooh.
So my 15-year-old self,
Ooh.
if I'm coming from my perspective now, I might start crying when I say this, but I would probably say it'll be okay.
Yeah, it'll work out.
And trust your gut and trust your resilience.
Yeah. Trust yourself. Yeah, trust yourself. Don't bring in emotion here, Miss Bonney. What does mateship mean to you?
What does mateship mean to you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What a cool question.
Yeah.
Mateship. I think it's that connection that you have when you feel safe.
Yeah.
And that could apply to your family as well, I think. But yeah, and I feel that with you, Lance. Like I really feel like, and I'm not saying this because we're, on this live together, but I always feel that very strong mateship, because I don't have to see you all the time. I don't have to talk to you every day. In fact, I can ignore you for an entire 12 months, and I know I can pick up the phone and you'll listen to me and you'll get me.
Yeah, and that's the very conversation you pick up where you left off. Yeah. Big tough period.
Yeah.
But no, that's safety, and that safety and support and being yourself. I think that's the biggest thing and I think the biggest thing I've taken from my relationship with my wife is, we allow each other just to be ourselves, and I think that is the very idea that is why we work. So,
but also bringing that childishness into it as well, I think is really cool. I think that's a mateship.
Still trying to find that balance, I think, in our house. I'm still trying to work that out a little bit, but we're getting there. But that's why I do all those push-ups to make get that. What would you tell your mate or a friend or a loved one who is battling a mental health challenge?
Well, man, that's the story of my life. That's my every single day is speaking to people about their challenges. And I like to remove words like battling and struggling because whilst you're alive, you're coping. Yep. So I really focus in on, if the best thing you can do is stay in bed with a box of wine and watch Netflix all day long and stay alive, that's you coping. Yep. So if the question is, what would you tell your mate who is battling a mental health challenge, I would congratulate that person for being alive to begin with.
Yeah.
And then listen and create the environment that supports how that person is feeling. Don't give advice, don't help, don't tell. Open yourself up to the listening and ask that person, and this is really important, rather than what's going on, how you going, because that's all going to get yeah, good. Ask that question, what does it feel like being you today? That's my question.
That is your question, and is what you're actually known for, that question.
I am.
One of the many things that you are known for.
Yeah.
But it is that question, but that very question takes people back a bit,
It's awkward and it's clunky, but requires an answer.
What do you mean? What do you mean what it feels like being me today? It feels okay. It's fine. It's good.
But I chuck that on the end of emails and stuff, and it's amazing what you get back, because people go, all of a sudden they have permission to talk about what it feels like. Because if I go, I try never to open emails with, how you going, or hi, I hope you're well, because most of the people, I don't even know them. So how would I hope that they're well or not? Because I don't know them. So I'll go something like, oh, did you enjoy the sun on the weekend? Because we all saw that probably, something like that. And then, what does it feel like being you today? And then people will actually send back like really cool responses.
I feel like crap, but it's okay.
I'm
going to. What tools, activities do you implement to help keep you balanced?
Oh, you got another hour? No.
What should you do? What do I do?
Well, I'm learning all the time, and it's like dodgem cards with me. Sometimes I'm free and then I smash again, and I smash frequently. So I'm always making it up as I go along. I know what I should do, and I know what makes me feel good, which is diet, exercise, activity. But I also give myself permission that doesn't happen all the time. So the things that keep me really buoyant are the radio. I love my radio station. I love walking in. I love everything about it, the mics, the production, everything. So at the moment, because of COVID, we don't have that. So that's kind of missing in my life. And I do work probably a little bit too much. So every year I also make sure I go on a European vacation with my little one. We didn't get to do that this year. And so I guess that's the best answer I can give you, because I'm not always successfully managing my mental health. Yeah. I know how to do it, and I understand when I crash that it's my responsibility to get up and to manage, because I have a responsibility to my job and my family, and most of all to myself.
Yeah, very good answer. That ownership component.
Yep.
Definitely. I love it. Well, Rae, this is I could keep talking to you for hours, as we have done on the phone many times, but I much appreciate it. It's said some absolute knowledge bombs tonight. It's great to also hear a not just the same old voice in terms of the things that are being said. We are, as I said, big time. We're trying to change the narrative, change the discussion, make sure that the conversations and the processes and everything, and the resources and the research and the education, everything goes into where it's going to be needed, because it's there's a lot of people being challenged, not just right now, and the amount that the spike in rates through suicide, mental illness, DV, the whole thing that'll be going through the next 6 to 12 months and beyond. There needs to be some more support around it in the right places. So.
And just don't assume that you know what's going on with someone.
Yeah. Okay.
Just don't.
Okay.
Thank you for having me on. I've had such a fun time. We could do this every Monday.
You're a superstar, Miss Bonney. We could keep you on Monday, but then every Monday. But then what about everybody else? It's but I do look forward to being a part of your world moving forward, because as I said, I appreciate and genuinely care for the relationship that we have. So I thank you very much, and good luck with that. As I said, there's many organisations. Check out that Australian Men's Health Forum. I'll put the link in the comments. But check it out, because it's all the facts and knowledge and everything you could possibly ask for in this space and making it work. So we share and create those conversations. And thank you very much. And good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.